penalising people who are already perfectly decent, sensible, and law-abiding.
He doesn't know what a working person is. He barely knows what a woman is. So the idea that Keir Starmer and his government are coming up to this it is obvious to me, because what else would they do?
But I mean, you can't make money writing a book saying don't eat too much sugar and fat, can you? It has to be some sort of magic industry conspiracy thing we never thought of before in order to flog these stupid books.
Hello and welcome back to Last Orders. I'm Tom Slater, editor of Spiked, joined as I am in every single episode by Chris Snowdon from the IEA. How you doing, Chris?
Very well, thanks, Tom. Good evening, afternoon or morning, listeners, all viewers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, confusing now with video.
Whatever time you're listening or viewing this on, it's great to see you. It's also great to see Paul Cox, the stand-up comedian, GB News regular and self-dubbed the People's Gammon. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm good, thanks. I always forget about the People's Gammon thing. I've had people shout this at me in the street and they get it wrong every single time. They're like, pig man. And I'm like, no, you can't, and you can't correct them. You know, I came out of Southwark Tube Station once and this guy went, pig man. And I went, I think you mean the People's Gammon. He walked away as if to say, no, I didn't actually. I did mean pig man. I've never watched it. What are you talking about? But this is genuinely an absolute honour to be here, Tom. Thanks for inviting me.
Not at all. It's great to have the pig man himself in here. So, Chris, shall we start by talking about an issue close to your heart? Drink driving. Keir Starmer, sensing that he needed to, seize on another very popular issue, has said there's going to be a consultation on lowering the drink driving limit in England and Wales, potentially, to bring it in line, presumably with Scotland as well as the rest of the EU. This is a nanny state policy that always rises every year or two, it feels like. And I know you've written about this debate recently. Do you want to tell us a bit about what this consultation is going to involve and what you think will come of it?
It's never really risen very much at the kind of mainstream political level, to be fair. It's always been like the BMA or somebody who you kind of expect to say, or Break or some road safety charity, which, fair enough, you'd expect them to say that kind of thing. But it's in a way, it's kind of surprising it hasn't come up higher in the political agenda before, because the limit in England is significantly higher than it is in most of Europe, lower than parts of America and so on. It's kind of globally quite average, but it's lower than most of Europe. And it seems like quite an easy win for a shallow political pygmy who's just looking for something to do. To announce, which of course is exactly what's happened with this. Finally, they've found the right government to do this, because there's nothing else pressing, is it, that the government could be getting on with. So why not do this?
So why not?
I think maybe the thing to say about this is that public health always tries or claims to be evidence-based. And this is one policy, rather like minimum pricing, that thanks to Scotland and devolution, we actually have a test case. In a very, very similar country, not very long ago, where they did drop the limit to the level that Keir Starmer's talking about now. And it was properly assessed in two high-quality peer-reviewed studies, maybe more, but certainly two, both of which, despite the authors almost certainly wanting to reach the opposite conclusion, they both admitted that it had not had any effect whatsoever on road accidents or road fatalities. In fact, in one of the models, in one of the studies, they found actually that Scotland would have a lower rate had it not made the change. This shouldn't be surprising because, well, firstly, we used to call it drunk driving, didn't we? I don't know when this little pivot happened to drink driving, but it wasn't an accident. It was because they wanted to send a message that you shouldn't drink anything at all before you drive. And there really isn't a lot of evidence to support that. Certainly in terms of all the other things that people can do to drive better, having more sleep or having a cup of coffee or not having too much coffee or whatever. It really doesn't make any difference, as has been shown in Scotland. Drink driving is a terrible thing, obviously, and there are too many people dying on the roads as a result of it. But the rate actually of deaths is much, much lower than the EU average. And it's been ticking down, broadly speaking, over time. And the people who are responsible for them are drunk. They are very, very drunk. Whenever you read about one of these cases in the local news, they go 3.5 times over the limit, 4 times over the limit, whatever it is. That's a lot of drink, a hell of a lot of drink. It's not people who have had a pint and a half of cider on a sunny afternoon and driven down the pub with the family for a roast. So it's completely evidence-free. The idea that public health is an evidence-based enterprise falls to pieces with things like minimum pricing and the drink drive experiment in Scotland when the evidence could not be clear that these things are not going to make any positive difference, and they are going to make a negative difference because they are going to damage pubs that are already struggling horrifically for all sorts of different reasons. You know my theory about politics and pubs. All politicians, basically, their main interest in life, we've got two things they really want to do across the board: censor the internet and close down the pubs. Most politics can be explained by one of those two agendas.
Absolutely. Paul, what do you make of all this?
So it's interesting. One of the reasons it doesn't get talked about, I think, is because of the exact reason that Chris just pointed out, that the statistics are going in the right direction. They're positive. There was a time, I think, when it came into action during the 70s and 80s where people were a little confused. Your dad would go down the pub and quite happily expect to drink 5 or 6 pints and was kind of aghast when someone said to him, that might not be a good idea. Nobody culturally thinks that anymore. And that the statistics on the roads, deaths on the roads in England in particular, are coming down as well. So it's not in terms of obviously I'm at pains to point out now that any death or any accident involving drink driving is incredibly bad, and I don't condone that in any way, shape, or form. But the reason it's not politically hot is because it's coming down. What I find interesting is I don't know if drink driving is coming down. I imagine it is. Now, interestingly, I run comedy clubs, and I run comedy clubs that tend to be in places that are outside of cities. I take sort of top-level pro comedy to places where there isn't already. And every time I do so, and they're in a town hall or a club somewhere that's a million miles from any public transport, there's always 50, 60, 70 cars in the car park, and absolutely everybody's drinking. And I always get a big laugh by saying, it doesn't apply here, does it? Clearly, everybody's drinking and driving home, and I don't think they're going over the limit. But I think that a lot of people still are having a drink and they are driving, and they know their own limits. Also, the other thing to mention is that it's not entirely clear. It's kind of vague exactly where your limit is. It's different for you than it is for you, and it's different for me. And it's in units, and no one really understands what that means. It's like this kind of mythical unit. What does that mean? You might as well say flagons or something to do with fairies. It doesn't make any difference because nobody absolutely understands what it is, which puts us in a bit of a conundrum, really, because the only way to really solve that would be to just let people decide what they think is the right sensible limit, or B, say it's nothing at all. And obviously the nothing at all argument is incredibly draconian, and we're all here on a podcast discussing the fact that we dislike the nanny state. I wouldn't want that at all. So where does it lie? And I think that's kind of distracting from the point. The point of this whole thing is that Keir Starmer has nothing better to do with his time, because he literally doesn't understand the greater issues that are involved in the UK. He never can get inside the head of the average Joe. He doesn't know what a working person is. He barely knows what a woman is. So the idea that Keir Starmer and his government are coming up to this it is obvious to me, because what else would they do?
Yeah,
all politics since Theresa May, you could arguably go back quite a bit further, but certainly since Theresa May, all politics has been prime ministers who find the job much harder than they thought it was going to be and resort to doing things like this. And Starmer has done it quicker than anybody else. Sunak leapt to it pretty quickly.
Yeah, no choice. He was on his way out.
They've all really been like that. They were like, I'm saying all these things. I'm going to get growth going. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get that. I'm going to reform the planning system. None of them do it. And so what they do is, let's take away our freedoms, basically, is what it always comes down to. It's always something about, it's a public's fault. It's a public's fault that the country's in this state.
Because they're desperate to be remembered in some way.
Yeah, legacy thing as well.
It's always this legacy thing.
But do they really think someone's going to build a statue to the person who equalised the drink driving across
not at all. I mean, I don't know the politician that introduced it in the first place, or the politician that introduced seatbelts. So I assume it came in.
I think it was Wilson. I think it was 67.
Would have been about that time. And I mean, so that's kind of just flawed my point, actually, because Chris does remember. But I.
Well, I'm unusually interested in this.
You
to be fair. I also know what you know alcohol, if you want me to say. So.
Well, explain it to our listeners, because I mean,
it's a shot of vodka, basically, or half a pint of beer.
That's incredible, isn't it? Because if you saw me take 2 shots of vodka and get in the car, people would question what I was doing. If I just whacked down a couple of shots and went, right, I've got to go pick the kids up.
But if you had a pint, that'd be all right.
Yeah, well, this is the point, isn't it? This is the point.
Well, this is why we have units, you see, to explain to people like you.
Okay, Chris.
How much alcohol there is in
you and your facts.
You and your facts, Chris. And to furnish us with some more facts, if it were to go down to the level that it is in Scotland and in Europe at the moment, how much would someone be able to drink?
Well, it does, as you say, it depends on how big you are, whether you're a man or a woman, how quickly you drink it, whether you drink it on an empty stomach or not. But broadly speaking, a big lad like you, Tom, could probably drink 2 pints of bitter, certainly,
Cool.
or a pint and a half of some decent lager like Moretti.
Yep.
And you'd be okay. If they reduce it, it will mean that a pint will be very iffy. It's in a particularly awkward area where they've reduced it to in Scotland. In that a pint of decent lager might put you over, it might not do. So the idea is to dissuade you from drinking anything at all before you get behind the wheel of a car. Which, of course, loads of people watching and going, well, so they should do. Why do you have to drive? Well, people do have to drive, actually, outside London, to drive all the time, especially in the countryside where I'm from. And it's just an completely unnecessary, joyless, stupid, and, as I say, ineffective policy.
And do you think this is another example of that, Paul? You mentioned it in terms of the comedy clubs that you run, but all decisions, again, as disastrous as they might seem in terms of their knock-on consequences, it's just because these politicians primarily live in London or cities and don't think about.
Yeah, I think that it's also low-hanging fruit, isn't it? Not to sound like some sort of business wally, but it is low-hanging fruit. It's very easy. They've already sort of destroyed the pub trade. So why not go for the pub? Why not go for the trade that's already destroyed? People, like Chris says, I am someone who lives in and around the countryside. Nobody in those places tends to walk to the pub. They might do, but often they don't. And they'll drive and they'll expect to maybe have 1 or 2 pints, often with a Sunday lunch. And if they go in the evening, they're likely to get a taxi. I don't think many people anymore set about taking a Saturday night out, 10 pints, and then getting in a car. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it is incredibly low hanging fruit. Interestingly, I stopped drinking last November for no reason. Genuinely, I mean, I feel like I have to say that in case there was some incident. All the killings seem to have stopped since I stopped drinking, Tom. But it's got nothing to do with it. But no, and I will go back to drinking because it's a lot of fun. But it was just something I tried, and I'm still on that wagon at the moment. So I never, but I have had that thought during that time. Because doing what I do and working late at night. I never got pulled over once until I started A, working as a comedian, or B, working in telly on late night shows, because that's the best time to put me on, is late when there's very few children about and anyone who can be influenced by my views. But I have been pulled over a number of times, and they'll always breathalyze you. Now, and I'm not getting pulled over recently, actually, but I'm always in the back of my mind thinking, I'll get pulled over now. I never have to think about it. Yeah. If I've been pulled over previously, I've often thought, well, when was the last time I had a drink? Usually it's never. Because I have to drive everywhere. So I'm now pre-programmed to think I must not. And it's one of the reasons it's very easy for me not to drink. I'm pre-programmed to think I won't have a drink because I've got to drive. If I lost my license, I'd essentially lose my career.
Do you think not drinking has impaired your driving in some way? No,
I was much more relaxed after a few beers. So I could drive very fast as well through London in the 20-mile-an-hour zones. It wasn't a problem.
Give the police a slip.
I tell you what is harder than drink driving. Don't know if that's a comparison anyone should make, but is driving at 20 mile an hour during the middle of the night through London.
Yeah. See, it's another. There's so many policies like that. Car accidents aren't really happening because people are driving 30. They're happening because people are driving 50 or 60 in a 30 zone. Driving crashes are happening because people are drinking way over the existing limit. And time again, the politicians, rather than clamp down on the people actually blatantly flouting the law, go after basically law-abiding people. Let's make the people who are already not really causing any harm to anybody, let's make their life a little bit miserable because they'll actually obey the law. Let's clamp down on gun crime by hassling farmers about some rusty shotgun. We can't do anything about illegal immigration. Let's clamp down on legal immigration. Time after time after time. It's there are problems in the country, and the politicians go for what you call the low-hanging fruit. But it's not even that. That suggests that you get some benefit from plucking it, it's just penalising people who are already perfectly decent, sensible, and law-abiding. And they will. If you say you can't have more than 3/4 of a pint or whatever, they'll change their ways. But the people having 10 pints won't. It's obvious. Yeah,
so it doesn't actually affect, like you say, it won't affect anybody nobody's thinking of drinking and driving anyway. Most people are unsure. When you take it to that point, and it's just, if it's under a pint, I don't know how people are going to, do you have half? Do you ask the barmaid for just enough to drive on?
That'd be a great order.
Yeah. Can you imagine just going out
on like a driving measure of whatever, that would be.
Just get them to make the decision.
Yeah.
What do I look like? They get you on the, they get you on the scales.
They're the experts, aren't they? Yeah.
Can you imagine? Just there. Well, if I take my trousers off, no, that's not going to work at all. So it's just going to add confusion. Nobody's really asking for this. No, nobody's distracted by it as well. When you see people coming in on the boats, you don't think. You're not distracted by the fact that the drink driving limit's changed, other than if you're trying to work out what a unit is or how many drinks you can have, and if you can ask the barmaid about it. But no one is actually thinking this is good policy. If this is their legacy, then, I mean, to be honest, if this is the Labour Party legacy, it's not bad for them.
It could be a lot worse.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse.
Depending on how things pan out. But talking about non-problems, Chris, there was a front page of the Express this week which suggested that as many as 10 million people in the UK are addicted to junk food. I understand there's going to be a conference addressing this crisis in our midst. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about this? And it's the junk food panic reheated, I suppose, but
I would like
with ultra processed foods involved.
I do remember discussing this front page with you. I didn't actually get around to reading the entire story.
Reading the entire headline.
No, I read
what the story is.
But I quite capable of winging this because I did see in the first couple of paragraphs the name Jen Unwin, who I do know as being someone who claims to have been addicted to carbohydrates specifically. And I think she's married to another chap called Unwin who's quite big in the Atkins diet movement, or whatever they've rebranded the Atkins diet to be this year. Low carb, very, very low carb diet. It's just a load of rubbish, obviously. I mean, as I say, I haven't read the story, but I assume it's a load of rubbish because there's no such thing as food addiction. It doesn't matter what kind of food it is. Other than in the most trivial sense that people need to keep eating food and get hungry every few hours and eat more.
Yeah,
that's a form of addiction, I suppose.
It's not really an option, is
it?
No,
not really.
I suppose, but...
I've completely dismissed this story. Out of hand.
That's that done.
Do you only junk food addicts, Paul? Do you think this is a burning problem?
I think I have done. Sort of in the last 3 years, I'm about 14 stone now, which is not the sort of thing you normally just say out loud. The reason I'm saying it is because within the last 3 years, I've been as high as nearly 18 stone. And so I'm someone who has definitely overeaten and am now in a much healthier state as a result. Do you know what? The reason people often say to me, oh, why was it? And it wasn't just because I was fat and I was on the... People say, oh, you appear on the telly. And
people kept calling you Pigman.
Yeah, Pigman. Just shouting Pigman at me. That was a problem, to be honest. That and I had these trotters. I don't know why I thought that would be a good idea. But I actually I got so embarrassed. I think I got gout last in 2024 last year. I think I was
coming back gout.
Yeah, exactly. Me and Henry VIII, and I got it last. I'm pretty sure I got it last year, and I was so embarrassed to go to the doctors. I thought I'm just going to lose some weight and sort myself out. And I feel like I don't know if I had an addiction or not, and I've never been sort of one to focus too much on that. Basically, if you eat less and move more, you will keep a healthier weight and it will be much better for you. Yes, it's true.
This is sort of hidden knowledge that you only get on this podcast. But it is that simple. People
come to my website, subscribe. It's £1,000 a month and I'll teach you some more nonsense. But no, of course it's widely known knowledge that that's what you need to do. Now, I would find that I would eat very late at night, often on the way home from gigs, and the sort of food that was available then was very convenient or fast food. Now, was I addicted to the food? I don't know. It was. I found it particularly delicious, and I knew it was bad for me, and I knew that stopping would be good for me. Is there culturally an issue? Maybe. It feels like if it is, it's among the working classes because of the price point of the food. But even then, how tangible is that? Can you point at that? I mean, you can point at fat kids. But and there are a lot more of those now.
As I do often.
Yeah, just wandering down the street, particularly in poor areas. Remarkable, look at that one. Or Gaza, there seems to be a lot of fat people in Gaza.
Yeah, it's a funny one.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that.
How did you lose weight and did you have withdrawal symptoms from this so-called addiction?
I lost weight by eating a lot less. I cut out a meal, essentially. I cut out breakfast and ate almost in a window. So unbeknownst to me, I was doing intermittent fasting. I described what I was doing to someone. They went, oh, you're doing intermittent fasting. And I thought, am I? I didn't plan to do that. Basically, ate less and in a smaller window, basically to try and cut out eating late at night. And it worked. And I feel much healthier and fitter for it. We clearly have an issue. And the only reason that people want to fix it is because of the impact on the NHS and that it costs the government more and more and more, and there's a lot more people, and there's a lot more overweight people, so therefore the cost is greater. But you're the man to answer this, Chris. Is it really as big an issue as people say it is? Because you see this hyperbole all the time. Every 3 months, everyone's getting fat. And I think, well, has that much changed?
No, the childhood obesity figures are made up completely. And the adult obesity figures are more reliable, but they haven't really changed, or have changed only very slightly in the last 15 years or so. And the economic costs to the NHS are largely illusory, because if people weren't dying from obesity-related diseases, they'd die from something else at a later date, having taken more money from the public purse.
So in that case,
it's not really a political issue at all. It shouldn't be.
What's the drive? Is it just because is it another piece of low-hanging fruit, ironically?
Yeah, it's more displacement politics.
So it's just something it's easier to point out that there's a lot more fast food available that's making people fat, and therefore we should stop it in some way.
I think it's
the
straightforward Puritanism. Yeah, it's straightforward, just moral Puritanism. Combined with, there's a lot of grifters out there writing all sorts of books about it and giving you all sorts of fad diets to go for. Public health people who kind of realise that they can't spend the rest of their lives campaigning against smoking, looking for other dragons to slay. A whole load of things there. Have you seen, by the way, the Netflix documentary about The Biggest Loser?
So I've seen. No, I'm aware of it. I've not seen it. No.
Quite good, but it just reminded me. There was one bloke in that who was going to petrol stations at random times, secretly, very furtively, to buy masses of donuts, and then would just stuff them down his face. And that kind of looked a little bit like addiction. He said himself he felt like he was going to meet some dealer.
Yeah.
So I suppose, addiction is basically a psychological problem. I suppose you can get addicted to all sorts of things. But the idea that there's 10 million people addicted to any type of food is
whenever this subject's brought up, the subject of education and nutrition is also brought up simultaneously, in the sense that there seems to be this notion that most people are, or every fat person is entirely uneducated on nutrition and how to cook, for instance. A lot of people don't know how to cook nutritious, healthy meals. Do we really need to have education to teach people that these things are healthier to eat and these things are unhealthy? I can't imagine that most people don't already know that. That doesn't seem to me like that's an issue either.
I think it's very difficult to make a genuinely healthy meal that is genuinely delicious. At least that's the main obstacle. That's my opinion. Some people go, vegetables, yum yum. People eat raw carrots and things like that.
Honey glazed.
I'm not one of those. I think you would have you'd have to put a lot of honey on it and so on. Like parsnips, isn't it? Stick them a lot of honey on them, they're fine.
Delicious.
But you wouldn't eat a raw
anything with honey on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like KFC, isn't it? Cover it in that jollop. It's lovely.
Or deep fry it.
Yeah.
But at which point it no longer becomes healthy.
Yeah.
Can we talk about processed food?
I was going to say, because you mentioned there some of the bads around foods. Certainly, ultra processed food is probably the main topic of discussion in that whole world. And people who've listened to this podcast will be aware of this. But generally speaking, the drift of the argument is that this stuff is like crack. Like it's the way in which it's produced makes it incredibly moreish. You never feel full, and therefore the argument being that you just almost can't stop eating it. But I know, Chris, you've written in the past week about a randomized control trial, so really proper science looking at what happens if you give people a bunch of food that's not processed and a bunch of food that is ultra processed. Are they eating more? Are they able to lose weight? Do you want to tell us a bit about what they found out there?
Very interesting study, co-authored amongst many, many authors, has to be said, by none other than Chris Van Tuliken, friend of the show, and author of Ultra Processed People. Heard of him, Paul? There's about 30 authors to this study. It was a good study. They split up, I think about 15 people in each group. Wasn't a massive study, but probably good enough. They split the people up between people who got sent in the post an ultra-processed healthy meal. In other words, a meal that was ultra-processed but nutritionally sound. It wasn't particularly high in salt, sugar, fat, and so on. And then to the other group, they sent a nutritionally sound, minimally processed meal. And I'm pretty sure the authors were hoping to see huge weight gain with the ultra-processed group and steady weight or even loss of weight amongst the other group. But they didn't. Both groups lost weight. The minimally processed group did lose more weight than the ultra-processed group, but both of them lost weight, even though they were both sent 4,000 calories a day. and they could eat as much as they want of it. They weren't told to eat it all by any means, but they could have done if they wanted to. The ad libitum diet, they call it. And they both lost weight. So what this proves, I mean, although people like Van Tilliken tried to spin it as showing, I think the Financial Times headline was ultra-processed food worse for you even if you're trying to lose weight or something, completely missing the point of the study.
Yep.
There was an effort to spin this to make it anti-ultra-processed food, but the important finding, surely, was that these people were given nothing but ultra-processed food and they lost weight. And they could have eaten as much of it as they want. And so the lesson, surely, is that it's nothing to do with the processing. It's just it's just to do with the nutrients. Obviously, it always was. And even Chris Van Tilliken a while ago was saying, I've been thinking more and more about this ultra-processed food thing since writing my crappy book about it. And
not so many words, I imagine.
No, he didn't say that. It's not a direct quote. And he said, I'm thinking more and more that actually it's about the fat and the salt, fat and the sugar in the food. Like, well, yeah, it is. But I mean, you can't make money writing a book saying don't eat too much sugar and fat, can you? It has to be some sort of magic industry conspiracy thing we never thought of before in order to flog these stupid books and go on TV and present the Christmas lecture for them.
Has he responded to the findings? Has there been any element of him maybe starting to realise in exactly the way that you suggest?
Well, as I say, he was one of the authors of it.
Yeah.
He was well aware. I haven't really been following him very much recently. I didn't notice him saying a great deal about it. But this is a randomized control trial they should have done in the first place, because there's a more famous randomized control trial done by Kevin Hall, who also was one of the authors of this new study. And that seemed to find that people on an ultra-processed diet put on more weight. But to me, it was fairly obvious because they showed you photos of the meals that the minimally processed meals were just not very appealing. Just loads and loads of green beans and things like that, and you can't stuff your face with it as compared to a load of burgers. So they didn't try and match them like for nutritional quality, which is in a randomized control. That's what you have to do. Otherwise, you're comparing apples and oranges or apples and pasties.
Which sounds like they're trying to determine the outcome of every time they've done the test previously. They want to show that ultra-processed food is bad for us. At the same time, the same people, almost the other side of the same people, are the people producing the ultra-processed food, because the reason we have such ultra-processed food and so many preservatives is because no one's got any flipping time to do anything else other than whack something in the oven for 30 minutes and then eat it for 5 minutes and get back to whatever it is you're doing to support the wider system, not to sound too conspiratorial.
But that's bollocks, isn't it? All people haven't got time to do it. Of course they have.
Yeah, but I think
people
that's true.
just spend all the time scrolling on their phone.
Well, they'd rather not spend their time doing
exactly.
it.
That's the
And
point.
fine.
I don't want to spend my time.
Convenience is a great
thing. For me
thing.
to say I haven't got time to do it would be a lie.
Well, also, you would absolutely find time, wouldn't you, if you were starving? If someone said the only barrier between you and starvation was the fact that something would take an hour and 20 minutes to cook from scratch, then you'd find the hour and 20 minutes, like Tom points out, But I guess my point was that the people that are trying to distract us in other ways are also the people that are saying this is bad for us. It's all the same people arguing that we should and shouldn't be doing something. And we're just in the middle going, what is it that we're supposed to do? I'm not sure what's about something that's ultra-processed, why it would be any worse for you. And most of it's just preservatives anyway. I mean, they've done studies where they found cadavers last longer in a field because we're all on the Finders pancakes. But outside of that, I've never seen any real studies to show anything about preservatives that shows that it's incredibly bad for us. And all of it, again, is just about making sure that it's convenient for a lifestyle that keeps people ready to get onto the treadmill or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Commercialization, whatever it might be, getting out to work, being more productive in other ways. I don't think we are productive in other ways. It's just people are identifying that people want to spend less time doing that and more time doing that.
Yeah, because it's boring.
They build an infrastructure to help us achieve it.
Cooking's really boring. People who like doing it are weird. Most people don't want to cook.
Television program
dedicated,
which I don't watch.
Yeah, I don't watch them either.
But so much of the argument around ultra-processed food seems incredibly vibes-based. Like, we don't like it because this stuff was made in a factory, capitalism,
by big corporations,
etc. We don't like that.
Plastic wrappers.
Also, there's the class coding of it. The kind of images that are put up whenever it's any kind of junk food, ultra-processed, whatever. It's always the kind of food they imagine the lower orders to be eating, and also kind of making unnecessarily demonizing the fact that people who haven't got a lot of time and often not a lot of money either actually quite like something that's quick and tasty. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And yet, because of the fact that there is this more puritanical streak, I suppose, it becomes a huge issue, even though it's not.
It's my USP, actually, quick and tasty.
Yeah, me too.
That's
I could murder a Finder's pancake.
yeah, why not? If they were here now,
forgotten about them.
Yeah.
that's,
Used to love those.
I haven't had one since the 90s, I reckon.
They've probably been reformulated.
Have you ever had one, Tom?
I've never had one.
You've
no.
never had one?
No,
They are
we should
They were
do a
big,
taste
they were
test
big in the
next time.
80s.
Yeah, I grew up. I was born in '79, so the '80s and '90s were my Finder's pancake years. Really,
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah,
I think we've got the title of this podcast now, The Finder's Pancake is, with Paul Cox.
that and custard. I think
Yeah,
I ate
exactly.
90% of the custard I'd ever eaten pre 2000.
On that note, shall we turn, Chris, to Lucy Letby corner?
Lucy Letby corner.
There's been a lot in Lucy Letby news.
It never stops, does
recently. It doesn't stop. What also doesn't stop is the number of panorama documentaries that
Yes.
seem to have been made about it. I know this is something that we should probably start with this. This, I believe, is their third
Yeah, they do one a year.
documentary about Lucy Letby now. They've really got the bit between their teeth where this is concerned. You reviewed it for The Spectator, talking about some of the evidence that has been presented, as well as some of the other documentaries which have been circulating. Every time one of these things come out, it's obviously taken as great vindication by all of the usual suspects. But once again, it doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, to be fair, we can't really criticise Panorama for talking about Lucy Letby too much, can we?
There's certainly a lot of demand. If you look at certain sections of Thirsty Old Man Twitter.
Well, there were two documentaries. One was on ITV late on a Sunday night, and then a couple of weeks later, a Panorama one by Judith Moritz and Jonathan Coffey, who were at the trial and know what they're talking about and have written a book about it. And the ITV one was very, very pro-Letby. And the Panorama one was basically debunked a lot of the skeptics' takes on the Letby thing. But because the Letbyists are quite deluded and thick, they didn't seem to notice this, and they did think it was a vindication of them. But only about, 10 minutes out of the 60 were about, potential issues with the case itself. And the rest of it was just, let's have this guy on who's claiming that these insulin readings were, perfectly normal and what have you. There's no point. Let's not get too stuck in the weeds with this. Although it's getting difficult not to get stuck in the weeds because it is getting into quite detailed scientific stuff now. But the long and short of it is both of the documentaries, both on the ITV one, the BBC one, kind of focused on the insulin poisonings and Baby O. Baby O was the one who had these pretty severe liver injuries. And I think they're focusing on those because those are the three cases, the three charges which Letby was found unanimously guilty. The only ones she was unanimously guilty. The rest she was it was majority verdicts. And so I guess the skeptics feel they need to take those on with particular vigor because clearly the jury felt they were the strongest charges. And there's a whole lot of stuff going back and forth on insulin, but the Panorama people got this guy who's written the chapter about this in the independent expert panel's report, and he did not stand up to questioning very well at all. So you wonder how these people are going to be if they ever go to court and get cross-examined by a proper silk. And they also had Nina Modi on there, who's kind of neonatologist bigwig in Britain, who is involved in this appeal for Letby. And that was quite an interesting interview with her because all these guys, you see, they've come up with alternative explanations for all the collapses and all the deaths. And people who've looked at what they've said say, well, this was already brought up in court and it was shown not to be true because they had this test or they had this expert or whatever. And that seems to be the case with Baby O. So the explanation that this panel have for Baby O's liver injuries is that he just suffered them during childbirth. Well, Baby O's mother had a lot of complaints about the Countess of Chester Hospital, as you would expect when she gave evidence to the Thurl inquiry, but she didn't have any complaints about the childbirth. And there's no evidence whatsoever there was any problem with his childbirth, which was a planned cesarean section. And so they put this to Nina Modi and said, well, you're saying it's childbirth injury, but there's no evidence for that. And in fact, if you look at the hemoglobin levels, kind of thing, there's a lot of evidence that the childbirth was absolutely fine. The liver was fine, right up until kind of the 11th hour. And her response, more or less, was to say, well, that kind of injury is the kind of thing that could be caused by a traumatic childbirth. Rather than we've looked at the evidence and we think it's that, it's more, we're just looking for anything that could explain this particular injury or collapse or death, kind of absent of the evidence of it. Do you know what I mean?
It's almost like they're starting from the conclusion and working backwards.
Well, yeah, trying to find their conclusion. Once they found something that vaguely fits, they go, well, it must be that. And let's not worry about what actually, whatever was actually shown in court or what the evidence actually is. So I think, bottom line, as usual, Tom, is she's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And in your piece, you mentioned that in a way, this is a kind of tale of two press conferences,
Mm-hmm.
which underlines the extent to which there is an element of the Letbyist wing of this debate, which is that they've purely on the basis of instinct, they think she's not guilty. And whatever explanation fits that is fine. Because really, it seems to oscillate between these children weren't killed at all, or they were killed by someone other than Letby, and it's kind of summed up by those two press conferences you were making this point. Do you want to tell them?
Yeah,
a
well,
bit
the
more about
first
this?
press conference, which was on the mainstream news all over the world, I think, a guy called Richard Taylor, who's a neonatologist, British neonatologist, living in Canada, working in Canada, he was reading out a report written by two other people for some reason, and he announced with great confidence that Dr. Stephen Breary, although he didn't name him, Dr. Stephen Breary had inserted a needle into Baby O's liver accidentally, and that's what killed him. And he then went into this monologue about how he wouldn't be able to sleep at night if he'd done this to someone, and some innocent nurse was in prison. And now virtually everyone seems to agree that this simply never happened. I mean, it was brought up actually, that possibility in court, and jury agreed that it didn't happen. But now even Peter Hitchens agrees that it didn't happen. He's the final arbiter on such things. If even he's given up in it, then it's safe to say that no one agrees. And one of the women who wrote this report that Taylor was using has since come out saying, our report never said that. So they've completely thrown this guy under the bus. They never said this at the time. Didn't say that when he was publicly accusing a doctor of killing a baby. They didn't come out saying, we didn't say that. So yeah, it's oscillating, like you say, it's shifting sands. And of course, one conclusion that the general public are likely to draw from that is there must be reasonable doubt. Mm-hmm. If all these different people are disagreeing, even the pro-Letby people are disagreeing, then we don't know where we are. We're better have a retrial. That's not how it works. It's not how it works legally, for a start, but it's not how it should work, because you can always find people who, be contrarian about these things. They're going to generate some controversy. That is not how we get to, the truth. The responsibility to make a decision beyond reasonable doubt is for the jury after a 10-month trial. It's not that, you could then have a load of people talking nonsense about it and throwing mud all over the place. And then you say, well, the general public has reasonable doubt, because the general public doesn't really know that much about the case.
As if it's a score draw.
Yeah, right, exactly. Let's do it again. Double or quit.
Absolutely. And Paul, have you got any strong feelings about the whole Letby saga? I know this is an incredibly strange and niche area.
It is incredible, and I'm glad you guys have taken on battle. But I'm always at pain to say, I get to talk about this occasionally, that obviously at the very centre of this, the very essence of this is dead babies and grieving families. And I know that that's not, neither of you being obtuse to that fact, but I always feel like it's important to remind people that's exactly what's happening here. Yeah. It's very difficult.
And it's worth saying that, because the extent to which we treat this somewhat lightheartedly, it's largely because we find Letbyism
absurd,
exactly. Well,
rather than
the target
core
of the conversation.
Of the issue,
But I find it conflicting, right? So by nature, I'm contrarian and I'm sort of anti-establishment, which fits in neatly with anti-nanny state. So there is a part of me, and I see the judiciary as part of the establishment. There's a part of me that really wants them to have got it wrong, because I want everybody to know that they could be fallible. And there seems to be, from one perspective, not necessarily my own, but there seems to be a perspective that they're being incredibly arrogant about this. We've made our decision. That's the decision. Obviously, that's not quite true. It's not an arbitrary decision. There was a jury. I mean, it seemed to be the longest trial I can remember. I don't know. You guys will tell me how many months it was. Maybe it'd be close to it. Yeah, 10 months.
I think it's the longest trial ever that didn't involve fraud.
Right. Okay. So there is so much uncertainty to this, right? And I'm talking about someone who purely only looks at it from a surface level, on X or sensational tabloid journalism, right? So I'm not someone who's ever got down in the weeds on this. And the fact that there is so much sort of what appears to be contradiction and uncertainty around this always leaves the door open to the fact that they might have got it wrong. Mm-hmm. So I always had that in mind. Of course, they might well have done. And I am a huge fan of Spike, particularly this podcast. And it's obviously a privilege to be on here. But the first time you guys started talking about this, I was like, oh yeah, there's a whole other group of people out there that genuinely just rely on the facts, and those facts are very difficult to dispute. And the type of people that have been arguing the facts aren't stupid people. These are intellectual people, politicians. I mean, some people might argue that politicians aren't intellectual people, but largely the people involved aren't stupid people, which adds credence to the fact that they could have got this wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm conflicted on this because I have not allowed myself to get down into the weeds. I definitely don't want to. I don't really want part of it. Lucy Letby looked. The other side of this, of course, and I should point out, I don't fancy Lucy Letby.
That's an important
I'm in the
clarification in this
demographic.
debate. Yeah.
I'm in the demographic. At no point
You have to declare your interest very early in this. In this area,
I'm sure she's fanciable, but I've only seen her arrest videos, and there was nothing about her arrest videos that did it for me.
You like kicking people when they're down, don't you?
No, I'm sorry. But, sorry, Lucy, who no doubt is watching this. And, I could change my mind. But we'll see. Let's see.
Because in a way, everyone's entry point to this debate is not necessarily whether or not they fancy her, although that's true in quite a large amount of cases, I dare say. But she doesn't look the type, I think, is basically
that was the point I was
pattern out so much of this.
That's the point.
Which, incidentally, I'm entirely in the opposite camp. I think it makes perfect sense. There was all this kind of discussion about she looks incredibly, she's so normal. This young woman likes cocktails and salsa dancing, goes to Ibiza. She always struck me as like someone who's pretending to be
too normal,
a normal person.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, then they raid a house and it's full of teddy bears and notes which talking about "I'm evil, I did this." It makes that not that that's the extent of why I believe she is guilty, but that was my jump off point. So I kind of it's like a kind of Rorschach test. This particular case,
but it opens the door to a whole bunch of other distractions, doesn't it? When we look at her and say she's typically European or British and white blonde hair. It then says, opens up the door to any grifter online who wants to say, well, if she'd been brown and didn't look this way, then we'd all be thinking differently. I don't know if that's true or not true. I mean, it fits a narrative. For me, all people that kill babies are evil. I don't care how they look, whether they're attractive or not. I don't all of a sudden become attracted to them. But actually, that'd be much worse, wouldn't it? If I said, actually, now I think about it, because she's a baby killer, that has made her much more attractive to me. That's not the case at all, I'd like to add. But I don't know. I mean, it was a 10-month trial. And by the way, the trial being 10 months is one thing. I remember this story being around for what seemed like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years maybe before it went to court. Was it not that
two
long?
or three, I think.
Okay, maybe I'm over.
Quite a long time, either way.
But it was a very long time
Yeah.
between somebody being identified and it going to court and then a conviction. And this is where I find this whole paradox for myself, being sort of a contrarian anti-establishment. That's exactly why they wouldn't want the conviction to be overturned. That again doesn't make her not guilty. We'd have to see a massive piece of evidence, I think, in order for it to go back to trial, and simply it hasn't arisen yet.
Exactly. Correct.
Chris, before we move on to our final couple of questions, is there any more Letby related news or fake news that you'd like to debunk?
It never stops. There's too much of it. I mean, the only other thing to say about the Panorama show is that Peter Hitchens and friends were getting very excited about a minor correction that the BBC put out in relation to the Panorama show, because the show ended with them basically kind of preparing the public for more charges, which were very likely to be brought, by saying that when Letby was at Liverpool Women's Hospital, the nasogastric tubes came out 40 times the rate that you would normally expect. But some people complained to the BBC, and this was reduced to 36. That was a big win for Hitchens.
Before we ask Paul the final question that we ask all of our guests, Chris, we've been trying to soft launch this theories segment.
I think it's been well and
Quite
truly launched. I think it's been very successful.
I mean, I would say most of the guests we've had on haven't quite jived with it. That's
Well,
why
if
we
we can-
haven't actually made a jingle yet, which is how you can tell it hasn't quite set in. But I understand you've got another
I have
theory.
got a theory.
It's very similar.
Yeah, everything scans to that tune.
This
it's
show
the
has a
beauty
whole
of the
house
jingle.
style to it. It's very, very involved.
Well, maybe the item should just be me coming up with a theory every 2
No,
weeks,
that would
which I'm
turn to
happy
you,
to
yeah.
do. So yeah, I've got a couple of theories, but I'll give you one. Save the next one for next week. All fires are arson, or at least all house fires. All fires of buildings are burned down. They're all arson these days, I think, because people don't use chip pans anymore, do they? That was a major source of house fires.
gone.
No one seems to have a chip pan anymore, which I think is a shame. Not many people smoke, and if they do, they tend to smoke outside because they're being cooked by society and their family. Therefore, there's not really, and electrics are pretty good condition. So there's really no possible way you can have a fire unless it's arson.
Dodgy black market vapes maybe could help it make a comeback.
Oh, that's very, very rare. But yeah, you get
chargers.
You get the odd charger.
Drunk people cooking pizzas.
Cooking pizzas. Would that cause a fire?
Pop one in the oven, fall asleep.
Yeah, I guess it can't. Well, I don't know. Combustible pizzas maybe are a thing.
People got fire alarms all over the place.
Yeah.
I think if a house burns to the ground, particularly if it's a commercial property, it's arson every time.
Got you. So it should almost be the presumption of guilt in all.
Yeah.
Whenever that
in fact,
happens.
they should immediately go to prison and then have to prove their way out.
Yeah.
And
they are allowed to call on Peter Hitchens if he's available. That's how.
What do you think of that? Do you think there's any truth?
It's difficult to say without any of the statistics available.
Well, giving you the most important facts.
You gave me the salient points.
No chip pans or smoking.
No chip pans and smoking. I've not worked for the fire brigade. My gut feeling is that not all house fires are arson, Chris. It's
a hell of a claim.
Nearly all.
It just feels like some of them might have been an accident.
Nearly all house fires and all commercial fires.
But do you know what? Immediately you
insurance jobs.
So as soon as you said that, I was thinking of 2 or 3 house fires that I'm aware of in my personal life. Nothing to do with me or anyone in my family or friends, to be honest. But there was an old lady on our street when I was growing up that died of smoke inhalation because she fell asleep with a candle on top of some magazines, and that burnt the house down.
Really?
Right? Don't know what the sound effect for, but that's not
So
going to happen.
according to Chris, she was faking her own death. Or something.
Yeah,
that
wouldn't be, but that's not unlikely to happen now, isn't it? You've actually drawn a line in the sand and said, actually, after a point in time, which is the modernity of house fires.
People still use candles, though. To be fair,
They do. I hadn't thought of candles. Why didn't you wake up?
Cracking the theory.
Yeah.
We'll have to revisit this in coming weeks.
All right, not all, but nearly all.
Okay, that's fine. That's fair. I like that you moderated it in light of new evidence, which is important. Paul, as you will know, because I know you've listened to the show before, when we have our guests on, we always ask them at the very end to indulge their inner authoritarian. If there was one thing that they had to ban, would like to ban, just something that irks them, irritates them, what would it be? So what would your ban be?
You are a dictator.
Japanese tourists, and on the basis that I went to Paris this weekend. On the way out, one fell on me. On the way back, one tripped me up with their suitcase. Right, the one who fell on me.
Was it a wheelie suitcase?
It was a wheelie suitcase, and I wasn't going to point that out. Okay, I'm not blaming the wheelie suitcase. I'm blaming specifically the Japanese tourists. These were 2 different people. Now the guy fell on me going up a moving stairs, and I think if you can't get yourself up a stairs that's doing all the work for you, then you shouldn't be allowed to travel. This guy fell on me, and you know the Japanese. I don't know where I'm going with this now, but
didn't apologise.
They're like he didn't at all. He didn't even look at me. That did irk me now I think about it. But he wasn't. It was light, traditionally light. He wasn't overweight at all.
Yeah,
but he hit me with quite a force.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's one thing. I'm just going to let it go. I don't know how old he was. Maybe he was drunk. I don't know what the Japanese get up to when I'm not around, if I'm honest. But when I was coming back, another one tripped me up with a wheelie suitcase, and I thought this is either a vendetta for something I'm unaware of. Maybe they're watching something I've said on TV or on a podcast somewhere. But yeah, I think because of this, and because this is 2 instances over a weekend, then we must eradicate them all.
there we go.
Blimey.
I mean, eradicate's quite a strong word.
Sorry, I don't take that back. Much like
from being able to come and be
much like
tourists
Chris's
to
theory,
the
I'd like to backpedal slightly and say maybe we should politely ask them not to.
Well, on that stark note, Paul, Chris, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Last Orders. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and click the bell so you never miss another spiked video. If you're listening to this on your podcast app, make sure you subscribe there and give us a glowing 5-star review. And if you'd like to get in touch with your questions or band suggestions, email us at lastorders@spiked-online.com.